In a distant galaxy, the Zorath Empire was in great trouble. The Empire was locked in a fierce war against a powerful enemy known as the Korthans. The Korthans had advanced technology and fierce soldiers. One by one, the Zorath soldiers fell in battle, and their once mighty empire began to crumble. Panic filled the hearts of Zorath leaders as they faced defeat. They knew they needed a miracle to survive. In a grand chamber deep within their stronghold, the Zorath leaders gathered. They were worried and desperate. The walls were covered with maps and images of their fallen soldiers. The mood was grim as they discussed their options. "We cannot keep fighting like this," said General Krell, a tall Zorath with sharp features and a deep voice. "Our troops are exhausted. The Korthans will soon reach our home planet." The leaders nodded in agreement. They had fought hard, but their resources were dwindling. They needed a new plan, something bold and unexpected. Then the head scientist, Dr. Vera, stepped forward. She was a small Zorath with bright blue skin and keen eyes. "What if we resurrect great warriors from history? Humans have fought against many foes. They are known for their bravery and skill in battle." The room fell silent as the leaders considered her words. Resurrecting human soldiers was a daring idea. "But how can we do that?" asked Commander Zith, who looked skeptical. "We have no technology for such a task," Dr. Vera smiled. "I have been studying the DNA of humans for years. We have collected samples from ancient battles on Earth. With our advanced technology, we can bring them back to life." The leaders exchanged glances, their interest growing. Bringing back legendary warriors could be the key to turning the tide in the war. "Who will we bring back?" asked General Krell, excitement creeping into his voice. "Let's start with the greatest general in human history, Alexander the Great," Dr. Vera suggested. "He is known for his brilliant strategies and leadership. His army conquered vast lands. He will inspire our soldiers." The leaders murmured in agreement. They could see the potential of such a powerful ally. "And we should also bring back soldiers from World War II, said Dr. Vera. "They are known for their courage and teamwork. They can teach our soldiers how to fight effectively." The room buzzed with energy as the leaders discussed the names of great warriors they could resurrect. They spoke of Joan of Arc, a fearless woman who led her people to victory, and of Genghis Khan, a fierce warrior known for his unyielding strength. Each name added to the growing hope within the chamber. After hours of discussion, the leaders made their decision. They would resurrect a select group of legendary human soldiers. It was a risky plan, but they had no other choice. If they did nothing, their empire would fall. With the decision made, the Zorath leaders began preparations. Dr. Vera and her team worked day and night, gathering the DNA samples and using their advanced technology to bring the warriors back to life. They set up a special chamber where the soldiers would awaken, ready to fight for the Zorath Empire. As the days passed, the tension in the air was palpable. Would this plan work? Would the human soldiers be able to help the Zorath in their darkest hour? The leaders could only hope. Finally, the moment arrived. The chamber was ready, and the scientists stood by, waiting to see if their efforts would succeed. The leaders gathered around, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The air was thick with hope and fear. When the chamber began to hum with energy, the Zorath leaders held their breath. Would they see the heroes of Earth rise again? Only time would tell if this desperate choice would save them from defeat. The chamber hummed with energy as the Zorath scientists prepared to bring the legendary human soldiers back to life. General Krell stood at the front, his heart racing with excitement and anxiety. He glanced at Dr. Vera, who was focused on the control panel, her fingers flying over the buttons. "Are you ready?" Krell asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Just a few more moments," Dr. Vera replied, her eyes bright with determination. "The process is almost complete." As the final sequences activated, the chamber filled with a bright light. The leaders watched in awe as figures began to take shape inside the glass enclosure. Slowly, the light faded, revealing the soldiers who had been resurrected. The first to awaken was Alexander the Great. He stood tall with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. His armor gleamed under the lights, and he looked around, taking in his new surroundings. Confusion crossed his face as he realized he was no longer on Earth. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice strong and commanding. "Welcome to the Zorath Empire," Dr. Vera said, stepping forward. "You have been brought back to help us in a great war." As the other soldiers began to awaken, the room filled with whispers of surprise and curiosity. Joan of Arc stood next, her expression fierce and determined. Next was a World War II soldier, his uniform still intact, with a look of disbelief as he surveyed the alien technology around him. "Are we dead? Or is this some kind of trick?" the soldier asked, his brow furrowed. "No trick," General Krell said, stepping forward to address them all. "You are here to fight for our survival against the Korthans." The soldiers exchanged glances, still trying to process their situation. Alexander took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "Tell us more about this war. What are the Korthans?" Dr. Vera took a deep breath. "They are a powerful enemy with advanced weapons. They have been defeating us in battle, and we need your skills to turn the tide. You are the best warriors from Earth, and we believe you can help us win." Joan nodded, her spirit ignited. "We have fought many battles on Earth. We will fight again! Lead us, and we will show the enemy our strength." The atmosphere in the chamber shifted. The soldiers began to feel a sense of purpose. They were no longer confused but motivated to fight for their new allies. General Krell felt a surge of hope. "We will train you to understand our technology and tactics. Together, we will create a powerful force. Are you ready to join us?" The soldiers, inspired by Krell's words, nodded in agreement. They knew they were warriors, and they were ready for the challenge. After a brief orientation, the Zorath leaders took the human soldiers to the training grounds. The area was vast, filled with advanced Zorath technology. It was a strange world for the humans, but they were determined to adapt. The training began immediately. The Zorath soldiers showed the humans how to use their weapons and machinery. At first, the humans struggled with the technology. The Zorath weapons were unlike anything they had ever seen, with glowing buttons and strange mechanics. Frustration grew among the humans. One World War II soldier exclaimed, "This is nothing like our guns. How are we supposed to use these?" But as the days passed, the humans began to learn. They practiced with determination, showing their natural fighting skills. They taught the Zorath soldiers some of their old tactics, using teamwork and strategy to overcome obstacles. As the training continued, bonds formed between the two groups. The humans shared stories of their battles, inspiring the Zorath with tales of courage and sacrifice. In return, the Zorath explained their culture and history, building a bridge of understanding. One evening, after a long day of training, Alexander gathered the soldiers around a campfire. He spoke of the importance of unity in battle, reminding them that they were all fighting for the same goal. "Together, we will be unstoppable," he declared, his voice ringing with confidence. The humans and Zorath shared laughter and stories under the stars, feeling a growing sense of camaraderie. They had come from different worlds, but now they stood together as allies, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they prepared for the next battle, they knew that their combined strength and shared determination would make them a force to be reckoned with. The awakening of the warriors was just the beginning of a new chapter in the Zorath Empire's fight for survival. The day of the battle had finally arrived. The Zorath Empire prepared for war against the Korthans, who had launched a massive attack on their home planet. The sky was dark with clouds and the air buzzed with tension and anticipation. The newly resurrected human soldiers stood alongside their Zorath allies, ready to face the enemy. General Krell stood at the front, looking over his troops. He could see the determination in their eyes, both human and Zorath. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for our worlds," he shouted, his voice carrying over the assembled soldiers. "Together, we will show the Korthans the power of our alliance." The soldiers cheered, their spirits lifted. The humans, dressed in Zorath uniforms, felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. They had trained hard and learned how to use the advanced weapons, but facing the Korthans would be their first real test. As the army prepared to move, Dr. Vera stood by the command center, monitoring the situation. "The Korthans are advancing rapidly," she warned. "We need to intercept them before they reach the capital city." "Send our forces to the front line," Krell ordered. He knew they had to act quickly. The Korthans were ruthless, and if they reached the capital, many lives would be lost. The soldiers moved in formation, ready for battle. The humans remembered their training and worked together, just as they had on Earth. Joan of Arc led a group of Zorath soldiers, inspiring them with her courage. "Stay close! Trust in each other!" she shouted. As they approached the battlefield, the sound of explosions echoed in the distance. Smoke filled the air, and the ground trembled under the weight of the conflict. The Korthan forces were already engaged with another Zorath unit. When the two sides clashed, the Zorath and human soldiers fought fiercely. The Korthans, with their advanced technology, fired energy blasts from their weapons, lighting up the battlefield. But the combined forces of the Zorath and the humans fought back with equal strength. Alexander the Great moved through the chaos, shouting commands and rallying his troops. He wielded a Zorath energy sword, its blade glowing brightly. "Focus on the enemy! Aim for their leaders!" he yelled, directing the human soldiers to target the Korthan commanders. The humans quickly adapted to the battlefield, using their training and strategies from Earth. They worked together, forming small teams to outmaneuver the Korthans. The Zorath soldiers were impressed by the humans' quick thinking and teamwork. As the battle raged on, a loud explosion rocked the area. A Korthan warship had landed nearby, deploying more soldiers. The Zorath army was pushed back, struggling to hold their ground. Dr. Vera watched from the command center, her heart racing. "We need to regroup. Our forces are being overwhelmed," she shouted into the communication device. General Krell realized that they had to act quickly. "We must create a distraction," he said to his officers. "Joan, take a group and flank the Korthan soldiers. Alexander, lead a charge toward the warship." Joan nodded, understanding the urgency. "Let's move," she called, leading her team toward the Korthan flank. They crept silently through the smoke, ready to strike. Meanwhile, Alexander rallied the human soldiers, their faces filled with determination. "Follow me! We will take down that warship!" He charged forward, the energy sword raised high. The humans followed, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. As they approached the warship, Korthan soldiers turned to face them. The humans fought bravely, using everything they had learned. They ducked and rolled, firing their weapons with precision. The Zorath soldiers fought beside them, their skills complementing one another. Joan and her team struck the Korthans from the side, causing chaos in their ranks. The Korthans were confused and struggled to fight back against the sudden attack. This was the moment the Zorath army needed. With their combined efforts, the Zorath and human soldiers pushed back the Korthans, slowly regaining control of the battlefield. The tide was turning, but the battle was far from over. General Krell watched the scene unfold, a feeling of hope rising within him. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting together, forging a bond that could change the future of their worlds. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting light on the battlefield, Krell knew that they had a chance. With courage and unity, they would fight until the very end. After the fierce battle, the Zorath Empire celebrated a hard-won victory. The combined forces of humans and Zorath had pushed the Korthans back, but the mood in the camp was mixed. While there was joy over their success, unease lingered in the air. As night fell, the campfire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the faces of the soldiers. The humans gathered with their Zorath allies, discussing the battle. But beneath the surface, doubts began to surface. Alexander sat beside Joan, both of them catching their breath after the fight. "We did well today," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "But we must be careful. The Korthans will not give up easily." Joan nodded but glanced around at their Zorath allies. "I wonder if they truly trust us," she said quietly. "We are still strangers in their world." Nearby, General Krell stood with Dr. Vera, reviewing the battle strategy. He could see the human soldiers talking among themselves, their expressions showing uncertainty. "We cannot afford any doubts now," he said to Dr. Vera. "Trust is essential in this war." "Agreed," Dr. Vera replied. "But we must earn their trust as well. They have fought hard, but they are not Zorath. We should include them in our plans more." Just then, a loud voice interrupted their conversation. A Zorath soldier named Thalor stood up, glaring at the humans. "They are still just humans. How can we trust them? They come from a planet that lost to the Korthans before." The camp fell silent. All eyes turned to Alexander and Joan. The tension was palpable. Joan felt her heart race. "We fought side by side today. We proved ourselves," she exclaimed, standing up to face Thalor. "Proved yourselves?" Thalor scoffed. "You are still untested. You do not know our ways or our technology." Krell stepped in, sensing the conflict rising. "We are all allies now. We must work together. We cannot let old prejudices divide us." His voice was firm and the soldiers listened. "But how can we trust them?" Thalor pressed, crossing his arms. "What if they turn on us?" Alexander stepped forward, his expression serious. "You think we want to betray you? We have seen the Korthan threat, just like you. We are fighting for our survival, too." "Enough!" Krell shouted, raising his hand. "This is not the time for division. We need a plan for the next battle. If we let distrust take hold, we will all lose." Joan looked around, seeing the uncertainty in her fellow soldiers' eyes. She took a deep breath, knowing she had to say something. "I understand your fears. We are not Zorath, but we are warriors. We want to help you defeat the Korthans. Trust is built over time. Let's work together and show each other what we can do." Her words hung in the air, and Krell nodded in agreement. "Yes, let us create a plan where we all contribute. We must train together and share our skills." Slowly, the tension began to ease. Thalor shifted his gaze, still wary but less confrontational. "Very well, but if you fail, do not expect us to forgive you." The group agreed to meet the next day to strategize. As the fire crackled and the night wore on, Alexander and Joan exchanged glances. They knew this was just the beginning of a long journey. That night, while others slept, Joan couldn't shake the feeling of doubt. She wondered if their Zorath allies truly believed in them. Could they overcome their differences to unite against the Korthans? As she gazed up at the stars, she felt a sense of determination rising within her. They had to prove themselves. They had to show that trust could be built, no matter the differences between their worlds. In the morning, they gathered again, ready to put their plan into action. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. They shared ideas, combining Zorath tactics with human strategies. They practiced drills together, learning from one another. With each passing day, they began to build a bond. The humans showed the Zorath how to use their old combat techniques, while the Zorath taught the humans about their advanced technology. But still, the trust issues lingered, like a shadow over their growing friendship. Joan felt the weight of their past battles, and she knew they had to keep fighting not only the Korthans, but also the doubts that threatened their alliance. As they prepared for the next confrontation, Joan and Alexander were determined to prove that they were worthy allies. They would not let fear or mistrust hold them back. Together they would stand strong, ready to face whatever came their way. The dawn broke over the Zorath Empire, casting a warm glow across the battlefield. The air was filled with the sounds of soldiers preparing for their next fight against the Korthans. After days of training together, the humans and Zorath were now ready to face the enemy as one united force. Joan stood with Alexander and General Krell, looking over the troops gathered before them. The atmosphere was charged with energy. The previous trust issues had started to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. "Today we fight not as humans and Zorath, but as allies," Krell announced, his voice strong and steady. The soldiers cheered, their hearts filled with hope. They had learned to respect one another, blending their skills and strategies. Joan felt proud to be part of this alliance. "Let's show the Korthans that we are stronger together," she said, her eyes shining with determination. As they marched toward the battlefield, the camaraderie was evident. Zorath soldiers and humans moved in formation, sharing jokes and laughter. For the first time, they felt like a true team. Alexander turned to Joan, a smile on his face. "We've come a long way," he said. "I believe we can win this fight." Joan nodded, feeling the weight of their journey. "We've trained hard. We're ready." But deep down, she knew the battle ahead would be tough. The Korthans were powerful and relentless. They had already lost many lives, and the thought of facing them again made her anxious. She took a deep breath, pushing her fears aside. "We have each other," she reminded herself. "That is what matters." As they approached the battlefield, the Korthan forces came into view. A dark wave of soldiers ready for conflict. The tension in the air thickened. General Krell raised his hand, signaling for silence. "Remember our training! Stay focused and work together!" he shouted, and the soldiers fell silent, awaiting his command. "On my signal, we charge," Krell called out, his eyes locked on the enemy. The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Finally, Krell shouted, "Now! Charge!" The Zorath and human soldiers surged forward as one. The clash of weapons echoed across the battlefield. Energy blasts lit up the sky, and the air filled with shouts and cries. The sight was both chaotic and exhilarating. Joan fought alongside Alexander, their movements synchronized from days of training. Joan felt the rush of battle as she ducked under a Korthan's swing, then countered with a swift strike of her weapon. She could see the Zorath soldiers fighting valiantly beside them, their strength and agility impressive. The humans fought with the same determination, showing that they were ready to stand their ground. As the battle raged, Joan noticed Thalor fighting near her. He had become a reliable ally, and they had formed a bond based on mutual respect. "Keep pushing forward. he shouted, driving back a group of Korthans. Joan nodded, inspired by his bravery. In the heat of the fight, they began to gain ground. The Korthans were taken aback by the unity of the Zorath and humans. They hadn't expected this fierce resistance. With each enemy they defeated, the soldiers felt their confidence grow. Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the battlefield. A Korthan warship had descended, trying to turn the tide of battle. Panic swept through the ranks as soldiers looked up, fear gripping them. "Stay together!" Krell yelled, rallying his troops. "We can take it down!" With newfound determination, Joan, Alexander, Thalor, and other soldiers focused their fire on the warship. They worked together, combining their efforts, aiming for its weak points. Energy blasts erupted around them as they fired their weapons in unison. As the warship took damage, a bright flash lit up the sky. With one final explosion, the ship spiraled down, crashing to the ground. The soldiers erupted in cheers, their spirits soaring. Joan felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had done it. They had faced the Korthans together and won a significant victory. The tide of the battle was turning in their favor. As the dust settled, Joan looked around at her fellow soldiers. They were tired but triumphant, their faces filled with pride. The trust issues that had once loomed over them had vanished, replaced by a strong bond forged in battle. With the Korthans in retreat, Krell gathered everyone for a moment of recognition. "Today we have proven that together we can overcome any challenge," he said, his voice filled with pride. "This is just the beginning of our alliance." The soldiers cheered, their hearts united as one. Joan felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. They had become a family fighting for a common cause. As they began to regroup and care for their wounded, Joan looked at Alexander, a smile spreading across her face. "This is a new beginning," she said softly. "Together we can achieve anything." Alexander nodded, his eyes shining with hope. "Yes, and we will continue to fight for our worlds, side by side." With that promise, they faced the future, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing they had each other's backs.